The story of blasters is probably the saddest story in Splatoon. They were incredibly strong in Splatoon 1, but they were so strong that they are still paying for their crimes even today. Splatoon 2 had their jump RNG absolutely gutted. And you might think it can't be that bad. I mean, if you want perfect accuracy, just stay grounded. But mobility is incredibly important. It not only lets you stay mobile in fights, keeping you alive, but it extends your threat range. You're able to peek around cover while shooting, for example. It was pretty important that blasters were able to do this. Splatoon 3 attempted a fix by adding intensify action, but it still had a downside. It gave blasters a level of gear dependency. For some weapons, this would be fine, but blasters, they like to run quick respawn. A gear ability that requires heavy investment, and so 2 to 3 subs of intensify action doesn't sound all that bad until you realise that these subs will be taking away from their quick respawn. It turned out that, to few people's surprise, Blaster really struggled in early Splatoon 3. But then, Sizzle Season 2023 dropped, and with it, S-Blast 92, and Blaster players around the world rejoiced as this was finally their chance to have a Blaster that was actually good. S-Blast's unique gimmick was that it had 2 main firing modes, grounded shots and aerial shots, the same gimmick as a few other weapons in this game. Both modes are incredibly powerful in their own way, but come with some trade-offs. Grounded mode is your long range mode and is best compared to range blaster. These shots have an extra unit of range and travel an extra 60% faster, making it a lot easier to hit directs, even while jumping. Because yes, you could use your grounded mode while jumping, and you still had perfect accuracy. And all you had to do was shoot before you press jump. The trade-off though was that it had an AoE of only 1.8 units on release. For reference, Range Blaster's AoE at the time was 3.5 units, and so it had just over half the radius. The aerial mode was a short range mode and best comparable to Lunar Blaster. Compared to Lunar, it had an extra half unit of range as well as a 4.0 unit blast radius, 0.2 units larger than Lunar and tied for the largest radius with Clash Blaster. The trade-off though was in its fire rate. Lunar could shoot once every 40 frames, but at the time, S-Blast had to wait a whole 60 frames, a whole second, to shoot again. So it was a really strong main weapon with some overtuned stats, but had downsides that kept it feeling fair. Despite this, it didn't see play, because while the main weapon was good, the everything else kinda wasn't. S-Blast was gifted, blessed even, with Reef Slider as a special. And back then, Reef Slider was the ultimate kit killer. Just like now, using it would get you killed, but the damage radius was still kinda iffy. S-Blast wasn't the worst Reef Slider weapon out there, but of all the 17 specials in the game, why did it have to get a Reef Slider? On top of that, its sub was Sprinkler, and provided very little utility. All it's designed to do is paint, which admittedly is a weakness of Blaster, but what is Sprinkler painting for? Oh yeah, Reef Slider. It was a cheap sub that did help with its mobility and could be used to body block, and sure, S-Blast isn't the worst Sprinkler user, but of all the sub weapons in the game, why did it have to get Sprinkler? Fast forward 6 months to the release of Chill Season 2023, and oh my god, we're getting a new S-Blast kit with Burst Bomb and Bio Bomb. That is insane. Burst Bomb is of course reminiscent of Grim Range Blaster from back in the day. It gives a bunch of mobility, more than Sprinkler, as well as having a use as a combo tool. Bio Bomb is also a straight upgrade, since it's a special blast instead of getting you killed, keeps you alive longer. It is one of the biggest glow-ups a weapon can get in Splatoon 3, and was basically everything the community was asking for. And so of course, after this kit dropped, S-Blast promptly went on to win absolutely nothing. Turns out it wasn't just the kit holding this weapon back. There was a bit more to it. Sure, it has 2 firing modes and that gives it the tools to handle a vast array of situations, but these were situations it was never specialised in handling. Take its short range mode for example. Yes, it has the largest AoE in the game, but if you want to play for short range AoE, its fire rate is so slow that weapons like Lunar Blaster will generally see better results. Same goes for long range mode. Its bullet velocity is faster, you will hit more directs, but its small AoE gives it a consistency issue outside of hitting directs. When playing for range, Range Blaster is more suited to these scenarios, thanks to the added consistency its AoE gives. But I can hear you saying right now that S-Blaster isn't about being tailored to one scenario, but instead about having the flexibility to handle any scenario. And you're right, that's quite clever of you. You've always been smart, and that's what I've always admired about you. But yes, that's entirely correct. S-Blast is a very flexible weapon, has a wide variety of tools. Especially S-Blast 91, which has Burst Bomb, a very flexible sub that can be used as support, or for paint, or for damage. But with flexibility comes a level of difficulty. When you have a lot of different options to choose from, it can be difficult to know which one to take, especially since, as I mentioned before, each mode has its own downsides. Are you in a situation to fight at range? Well, you better be able to hit your directs. Do you see an opportunity to use your short range? Well, you better position yourself in the right spot, else you're getting shredded by all the short range weapons. This weapon is so difficult that it requires a significant amount of time investment from the player. Understanding this weapon well enough to know what you are capable of and when you should go for different types of plays. Having the mechanical skill to hit your directs when it counts and the positioning to make good use of your AoE without getting immediately blown up. Add burst bomb combos on top of that, which are incredibly precise, and you get an incredibly difficult weapon. A weapon being difficult on its own doesn't make for a bad weapon. There are a lot of weapons out there that are difficult to play, but still get results. A difficult weapon needs to justify its difficulty. It needs to be backed up by sheer power, or it needs to have a unique and powerful combination of traits to offer something new that no other weapon can, or a unique mechanic or gimmick that ensures this weapon will always have a place in the meta. If players are going to invest a significant amount of time into a weapon, they need a guarantee that it will be worth it, that it will eventually pay off. Why invest time into this weapon if you could invest less time into another and do just as well, if not better? But that's fine, it's still early days. All it needed was a few buffs in the right direction and it just might be worth it. What kind of buffs? Well, there are two directions you can take. You can either choose to make its strengths stronger, have a larger payoff for the time invested, or you can make its weaknesses weaker, make its skill floor lower, and makes getting consistent results a bit easier. As patches rolled out, this is exactly what it got, an increase to its long range AoE, making it easier to play, as well as gaining the 5 frames that Machine lost, which also made it easier to play. And after all that, it still didn't see play. It's just one thing after another with this weapon, I swear. So it had a really strong baseline, didn't see play. Gets the perfect kit, still doesn't see play. Gets the perfect buffs, and it still doesn't see play. This weapon is basically perfect. So what is going on here? Maybe it has nothing to do with the weapon itself, and everything to do with the environment it's in. So what environment was it in? Well, at this time, patch 8 to 9-ish, we had a very specific meta going around. The fabled pencil double midline meta. A meta that focused a lot on midline fighting weapons. Think things like Squeezer, or Slosher, or Squeezer, or Stamper, or Squeezer, or Sloshing Machine, or Squeezer. Due to this emphasis on on mid-range weapons, short-range weapons did exist, but were often relegated to paint support. They could fight, sure, but unless you were a 52 gal, you would struggle to get close enough to mid-range weapons to even land a shot on them. So yes, there was an emphasis on fighting, but fighting at mid-range. S-Blast isn't a short-range weapon, and it can fight at mid-range, but it wasn't reliable. You either had to hit a direct, which isn't easy, or you had to rely on your really small AoE, which isn't easy. And sure, it got buffed to 2 units, but that's still incredibly small, all things considered. If you want to play a blaster that could fight at mid-range, why would you ever pick S-Blast when Range Blaster exists? Range Blaster thrived in this meta. Not only did it have some really good matchups against the meta weapons at the time, Slosher, Stamper and Squeezer were terrified of this thing, it also slot perfectly into meta comps at the time. What are Range Blaster's comp requirements? It wants cooler for intensify action and a paint support. And would you look at that, that is the foundation of every meta comp at the time. You want to add Range Blaster to your team? Go for it. It's not that hard. Also helped by the fact that Range Blaster is a pretty easy weapon to play. Not the easiest. That title of course goes to the mint populator, but I digress. My point here being, this meta was so perfect for Range Blaster that there was no point in even considering S-Blast, no matter how good it was. But all that changed when patch 9.0 dropped. Whilst this was a smaller patch in a game full of rather small patches, there were some very choice nerfs that would have a large impact on the current meta. The two most important ones for our story here were the changes to Squeezer and the changes to Slosher. These were the two strongest and therefore the two most defining weapons in this mid-range meta. Squeezer was in contest with being the strongest weapon in the game. With these weapons being toned back a bit, there was more room created for more weapons and more styles of play to see play. The range nerfs are also worth mentioning here, though wholly unnecessary. Range was not meta because it was the best blaster, it was good because it happened to be the main beneficiary of the meta at the time. Had patch 9.0 shipped, but without the range nerfs, I doubt range would be in that much of a better spot, but regardless. With Range Blaster thoroughly out of the picture and the meta shifting in a more favourable direction, S-Blast is now finally proving that it is one of the best weapons in the game, because at the time of recording, 2 major top-level tournaments were won by S-Blast 91. We of course have the sendouq Season 6 finale, where S-Blast won being used in a comp with Splash and Stamper, as well as winning Area Cup 29, where it was used with Splash and Slosher. It would seem as though the meta is shifting towards comps focused more on chip damage and combos, where S-Blast is both an enabler of combo weapons like Slosher and Stamper, as well as a beneficiary of this chip damage thanks to its damage combos. And so the rise of S-Blast shouldn't be all that surprising. It's a strong main weapon with a perfect kit. S-Blast has always been good. It's just that it's never been in an environment where it could thrive. Until now.